Hello and thank you for being with us on the road to Beijing, our special program taking you up to the start of the Olympic Games on August 8th. Still in mourning since the earthquake in Sichuan, China suspended the relay of the Olympic torch for 3 days earlier this week.
Sirens blaring on Beijing's Tiananmen Square. It was 2:28 p.m. local time on Monday. All of China came to a standstill. Financial markets in Hong Kong closed for the occasion. During 3 minutes, all that could be heard was silence. Then sirens rung out simultaneously throughout the entire country. From trains and boats, cars honked, school bells rung. Hundreds of thousands stood still at the exact time the earthquake shook the Sichuan province the week before. The entire country, still reeling, paid homage to the victims. It's the first time a national mourning is declared in China after a natural disaster. It lasted 3 days.
I used to think the biggest issue in 2008 was the Olympic Games, but now I realize that the value of human lives are much more important than the Games. I hope more people can be rescued, and we hope to be inspired by this tragedy and try to get a better result in the Olympics so as to pay tribute to the victims.
Like this former NBA player now back home, the entire Chinese athletic community has mobilized to help those in need. But after the days of mourning and another minute of silence Thursday, the Olympic torch pursued its route. The relay left the coastal town of Ningbo in the Sichuan province in the east of the country. As always, hundreds of people attended, waving red flags. Organizers have said that the relay set to take place in the Sichuan province between the 15th and 18th of June will take place between the 3rd and 5th of August instead, only a few days before the Olympic Games opening ceremony in Beijing.
Meanwhile, athletes around the world continue to prepare for the Games. This week's program takes a look at France, where the funding status of top-level athletes remains unclear. Certain big public companies offer special contracts that sponsor athletes as a part of their workforce, as does the French public railways, who for 25 years have provided a means for professional athletes to be on the company payroll. Take a look at the double life of an Olympic champion, Brice Guyard, fencer and engineer.
It's a tale of two lives. On one side, Brice Guyard, the fencer and double Olympic medalist in both the individual and team events. On the other side, Brice Guyard, the 27-year-old engineer for the French railways. He found the job through a special contract system for athletes in France. In a deal between the company and the Ministry of Youth and Sport, these contracts allow professional athletes to enter the workforce. He was quickly convinced that working for the railways was the right job for him.
There's an enormous amount of research needed to answer all the questions that arise. How do you keep a train on time? How can you improve the train's efficiency so it is less polluting? There's many aspects that are incredibly interesting behind the scenes.
Out of the arena, Brice spends hours locked in meetings or in front of a screen, gathering information. With an engineering and commerce degree, he now specialises in research and innovation. He heads an ambitious project, designing universal software for all researchers. The company lets him split his time between the office and his sporting ambitions. He even has a fan base at work.
We're his biggest fans. We're always the first to comment on his blog. I even buy the sports papers when he's in competition. We have a lot of affection for him. Sometimes we call him our champion, but then we correct ourselves. We have to remember he's not an object. We don't own him. But still, we feel proud to have him on our team. He makes us look good. We're very proud.
After the 2012 Olympics in London, he'll announce his retirement. Until then, Brice Guyard will divide his time between the office and the gym. Many of France's elite athletes train here alongside Brice in preparation for the upcoming Olympics. After a string of injuries and a tough qualification period for the Games, he'll now train to perfect his thrust and parry and return to peak form.
We'll celebrate later. For now, August 13, that's the date of my individual event. I'm preparing for war. On the day, I'll tell you right now, I'll be a killer. I'll give nothing away. I'm going to give it everything I've got. I'll do whatever it takes.
Je me donnerai à fond, quoi. Peu importe la manière.
With very little spare time on his hands, Bryce Guyard will have to juggle his professional life with his Olympic ambitions, being careful not to lose his balance.
Joining us now is Etienne Bonamy, editor of the daily sports newspaper L'Équipe. Hello, we've just seen the example of a public company. Could the private sector offer the same kind of contract?
Private company directly, no. I don't think there are any. It's very few anyway. If you even find an employer. But why the French Railway? Why the Ministry of Defense or the Ministry of the Interior?
About 30 contracts each time.
In France, there are about 400 athletes, and regionally, and 600 people in all, basically. And that has been decided by the Ministry of Youth and Sport to enable athletes to have some financial aid and a job at the same time with adapted working hours.
Now, this is for some athletes. Alain Bernard, for example, just integrated the gendarmerie. A great image of this swimming athlete with his new kepi and his big shoes and customized shoes because he couldn't find the size. Now, for example, swimming and Laure Manodou, a major star. Now, she's not a wage roll employee, is she?
No, because she's financially independent since 2004, and her success really launched her. She has tons of contracts, so she's put together her company. And
she's got a small company managing her own interests and contracts and engagements.
Exactly. And thanks to that, she's still in a swimming club, but she is financially independent.
Now, this aid, which some companies could provide athletes, now, does that exist elsewhere? For example, in the United States?
In the U.S., there are private training groups. They're professionals. And that's what Marie-Josée Perec was.
Now, the athlete pays.
Yeah, they pay. But they only take care of the elite.
Otherwise, universities also make their lives easier.
In the U.S., there are lots of athletes that practice top-level sports at the university. Same as for basketball and baseball, which are then professional sports after that. They have this curriculum that allows them to have adapted training hours. It looks a little bit like what we have in the sort of the state sports in France, which has existed for amateur top-level sports.
Is the French system good to you?
I'm going to answer that differently. It's not yet bad. It's changing today. It's been more than half a century that the National Sports Institute was created in Vincennes to group together the elite, to have them, to enable them to work, to find solutions, to let these people who, they're going to be in the INSEP when they're 15 and they're going to be leaving their sports careers when they're 30. These people don't actually have a job and they don't have a fixed profession. And they haven't paid into retirement funds until they're 30. So they actually are able to find jobs with the help of some sports federations. So over the last few years, this has been set up more seriously. Olympic preparation is working with Fabien Camus and the sports ministry as well. Now Tony Escarguet, who's aiming at his third title in kayaking.
He's the first standard bearer.
He's a physical education teacher. He's actually devoted to practicing right now.
Etienne Bonamy, thank you for being with us. And to conclude the program, a quick look at the torch route tracing the course of the Olympic flame in the Chinese provinces this coming week. After Shanghai, the flame will pass through the regions of Anhui and Hubei. And that's the end of our show. Thank you for staying with us. We'll be back next week for the next leg of On the Road to Beijing on France 24.